Hey, I'm Ed. Let's do proper keyword research without paying for tools. I've managed over 60 mil in Google ad spend, so I can show you how to get the best out of Google's keyword planner. I'll be answering some common questions as I go, and I'll give you some quick tips throughout the video. Intro done, let's crack on. To start, we need a reason for doing keyword research. So I picked the first thing that came to my head, beginning with A, which was accountant. Today, you and I are accountants, but it really doesn't matter. This process applies to any business. Let's work our way through my notes on the left-hand side, starting with paid tools. So I've used many paid tools in the past, but I've never really been that convinced of their value. They make sense for SEO and content ideas, but Google Ads is about accuracy, not just more keywords. And to be fair, Google gives you everything you need for free, often more data than these tools can offer you as well. For example, rarely do the paid tools give you specific location data beyond the country. None of these tools have clean and complete data on your competitors, and spying on their keywords is overrated, to be fair. So don't assume a competitor is making money bidding on those terms. They might be, they might not be. Perhaps more importantly, just because it works for them doesn't mean it'll work for you. You could argue one exception. I quite like Infinite Suggest because it uses Google's own auto-suggest data. But even that touts itself as a never-ending Google keyword suggestions, which is the opposite of what you and I as advertisers want. It's good though for negative keyword ideas, I'll give it that. If you're looking at these tools for a magic bullet on bids, don't bother. Instead, use Google's suggested bid as your barometer. It tells you how commercially viable that keyword could be. And when it comes to initial keyword research, nothing beats getting your hands dirty and doing the work, because if you don't do it, someone else will do it and they'll probably beat you. Before we dive into keywords, I want to cover a fundamental step that too many people skip. You should be doing this for your own business or if it's your clients. And let me just show you a sheet that I've got inside God Tier Ads, which is my product, by the way. But in here, there's clarity. Who do we serve? Why are we doing it? What do we do for these people? Which areas of the business do we want to target, and why should they choose us over our competitors? So I've just filled these in really quickly. Remember, this is going to be for an accountant. Again, it doesn't matter. So we're an accountant and we exist because we serve small businesses at a price they can afford. We as accountants, you and I, want to focus on payroll, then small business accounting, just to get our foot on the ladder. And why should our prospects choose us over the mountain of competitors? Well, we offer same-day bookkeeping and payroll runs at no extra cost. Incredibly exciting. In all seriousness, you should answer these questions, including the targets as well. How many leads or sales do you want to generate? And do this with your client, or if it's your own business, you should be doing this. And also, I highly recommend you actually do some competitor research, literally Googling your services or products and making notes of your competitors, what they do, what they offer, what their call to actions are, and that sort of thing. I know it's a boring exercise, but it's really good for creating ideas and also making sure that you're not missing a trick. Yeah, and always remember your goals, because what's the point in doing keyword research and advertising if we don't have a goal? Which is a rhetorical question. With that done, let's head back over to the planner. Okay, first we need to enter our seed keyword. So this is our category term. We can take a look around and get our bearings. So your seed keyword should have a decent volume. It should provide additional long tail ideas as well. So let's put discover new keyword, accountant. I'm in the UK, so that's fine. We don't need to enter a website address. Hit get results. Let's just close down refine keywords. And then the things we need to check: location targeting, language, search network. So I start with search partners off. You'll get cleaner data, and you should only really use partners to expand your campaigns when you found that they're working, if you need to, that is. In terms of date range, I use the 12 months because I like to see the trend over the year. And then Google will helpfully recommend some broaden your search terms, and they're really broad. I rarely use these unless something catches my eye. I give them a quick glance. So we get a fancy little chart that tracks the search volume over the year. Pretty self-explanatory. When we apply filters later to the keywords, this will adjust to show us the search volume. You can apply some breakdowns to the chart. I don't really use the device one anymore, and to be fair, it's too soon for us to be reviewing the location information. We need to refine our keywords further first. So before we start chopping away at the keyword data, we really need to answer another question. How do you find a high intent keyword? We can categorize keywords three ways. So low intent keywords would be navigational, informational, and we really want transactional. So a transactional keyword identifies commercial intent without preference to you or your competitors. I didn't make that up. A friend of mine, Josh, did, but he's not that smart, so I assume he stole it from someone else. But I like that. I like that definition. Keywords that identify commercial intent without preference to you or your competitors. We'll cover competitor terms later. Again, back to the planner. So I just wanted to cover that off because we've got another question to answer. So on the topic of competition, do you use the competition rating? So this column, competition, not wishing to sound harsh, but if you can't compete, don't compete. The exception being, of course, if you've got a low budget or if you're in a data gathering or testing phase. At this stage, keyword relevance matters far more than anything else. So don't worry about the competition column. But whilst we're talking about columns, let's have a look at our options. I mean, we could even opt to remove competition, get rid of that distraction, but it's not important. So for this example, I'm going to leave it in place. We can add some other columns if we so wish. You can use organic impressions and positions to filter out keywords you already rank for and you don't want to bid on those. Essentially, that's to avoid overlap. I'm going to assume that we're new in town, so we don't have any organic traffic. When looking at these keyword ideas, your seed keyword, so accountant in our case, you should have decent volume in order for them to provide additional long tail ideas with decent volume too. If you start too long, you'll miss loads of opportunities. So this is a decent enough amount of volume. We don't want to use the refine keyword tool at this stage, because if we update the seed keywords, it resets these settings. You'll also miss a few negative opportunities if you start using this too soon, and negatives are half the battle. Right, so what about bids? Let's cover off the question of top, low versus high. So don't expect your bids to be set at the low end and mop up all these searches. So don't think that you're going to get 33,000 impressions on a £2.51 or dollars or euros or whatever click. If you want a quick approximation of where a sort of medium bid would be, I use the low plus the high and then divide it by 1.8. So if we whack the calc on screen, so here we do 251 plus 970 divide by 1.8, and that gives us a slightly high side. So the expected bid is probably closer to £7 or dollars again, or whatever your currency is. That being said, you shouldn't be setting bids based on what you can afford to bid, or what I tell you to set your bids at, or even what Google tells you to set your bids at. You need to work out your ideal break-even starting bid, because it's your safe middle ground. So once you see data and hopefully some conversions coming in, then you can adjust bids and targets to suit. On a established account, you already know what converts, what your conversion rates are, and that will tell you what you should be bidding. Okay, so keyword ideas. Before we dive through the recommendations, let's fatten out our keyword selection. If we weren't confident of the kind of terms we should be adding, we could search for accountant and review the autocomplete suggestions. So let's have a look now. So we can see accountant near me, which is high intent. So that's someone looking to take action. Now, obviously, if you're not interested in local, then this is a potential negative keyword. If you're national, it still makes sense to have a location-based campaign where you put, well, let's do a search for it, where you put a local number in your call extension, but also have your location extension. So it just makes your your advert hyper local and more likely to get clicks. So we can see from the organic search results, which are a bigger tell, often a bigger tell than the ads, because anyone could put an ad up and they could be doing it wrong. But these organic results show local accountancy firms and brands in the area. So this is a high intent keyword. So this is a positive sign. Let's add accountant near me to the list. And because we're not stupid, let's add some keywords that we know are appropriate. So small business accounting, throw that one in. You're allowed to add up to 10 seed keywords here. Let's get results and review what we have. Now notice that Google's most relevant highly suggested term is CPA. I'm not so convinced. So let's head back to the search and take a look. And yeah, as I suspected, CPA is quite an informational term. It's not really something we want to be bidding on. So we can add that as a negative term. But the annoying thing about the keyword planner, if you go to keywords, you have to manually add negative keywords, which is obviously slower. So I've got a bit of a hacky way of doing this. So if we select the keyword we don't want, then let's create a master negatives. So this is just an ad group that you can add all your negative keywords to. So when you download your plan later, you've got your negative list. We can add that as a broad. So we're adding it to the plan. So that's now a negative. Right, let's start doing some filters because we've got 726 keywords here. So let's add a filter for keyword. Does not contain. And for now, let's just remove CPA. Let's assume we don't do anything, or we don't want to see terms for that. But let's also cut out some of these really low terms by using another filter for average monthly searches over 30. Why? Because anything less than 1 impression a day on average is unlikely to trigger an ad. And as we've already got hundreds of keywords, it's going to help us look through these. Also, we want to look for high intent terms. I mean, I don't want to scroll through all this lot. So that typically means higher cost. Don't think at this level you're going to find magic cheap keywords that are high converters. To be honest with you, they're very rare. So don't try and cheat it by looking at all the cheap terms. So we sort by the top of page bid, high range first. And then we have a quick squiz at what's going on here. Now, instantly I could see we don't have accounting and we have accountant. I noticed payroll. Well, we do payroll. So let's add those as well. But of course, you can check the search results if you're not sure, but I'm pretty confident because it's what we do. And then update again. So we've still got 558 terms to look through here, which is plenty. And to be honest with you, we don't want to be checking each and every single one because it's not about how many keywords. It's about finding the high intent keywords. We can always expand later. So now let's refine our keywords using the refine keywords tool. So importantly, when you update your seed keywords, it resets this filter. That's why I haven't used it until this point. So I'm seeing a lot of brand terms in here. So let's expand this and untick and then retick non-brand. So we've only got the non-brand terms for now. Let's just collapse that. Also this course, that's Google telling us it considers the semantic theme of these keywords, these terms, as training and learning focus. So I'm going to untick that as well, get those out of the results. That drops us down to 276, a bit more manageable. We've still got the impression filter set to equal or greater than 30. You can use, and we will cover this later, you can use DSA, dynamic search ads, to collect these low impression terms. But if you do that, you do need a robust negative keyword list. And we'll be adding those as we go. So let's carry on. You might also be thinking, why didn't I start with a website? Well, because if you use a website to source your keywords, the refine keywords filter isn't available. It's only available when you use seed keywords, not the website, which is annoying. I also wanted to show you the manual process because it makes sense to know specifically what you should be doing. But if you do start with the website first, before you refine your keywords, then use the entire site. Obviously, it gives you a more fuller picture. It depends on your situation, but the entire site here is absolutely fine, typically. You can also put your competitor websites in here, and you can even find popular YouTube videos on your subject matter. So we might find a video on accounting, and we can actually use that in here as well. So you can put any kind of URL you want in to find keyword suggestions. And the YouTube videos are quite good if they've got lots of conversation and commentary going on. Let's just dismiss that and collapse that. But again, we're still at 276, so let's add some more keywords. We're interested in payroll, so let's do a keyword contains and payroll. Let's weed this down a bit. That drops us down to 86. That's a bit more like it. Okay, so we have, if we're looking at high volume stuff, we've got services and we've got management. And the immediate question is this the same or a different ad group for these terms? So the best way to look at this when adding keywords is to remember what the user sees. So they see the advert and they don't see the keyword. So would one advert serve both of these keywords? Okay, and if we're not sure, it's the same old check again. We go back to Google and we search for them. So let's have a look. Okay, so we can see that payroll services, outsourcing, outsourced, outsourced. So this, again, this is positive intent. This is someone looking to outsource their payroll. Let's have a look at management. Oh, I can spell it right. Now, Sage is software. Software, not software, informational. So we can see that management is biased towards doing it yourself, i.e. software, whereas the service was more towards outsourcing. So the answer here for me is these are two separate ad groups. But I think we're going to focus on services because that's more relevant for our offering. What we could actually do now, before we start adding these keywords, is put more filters in. So let's edit does not contain. So let's put manage. What else would be related in here? Got system, got online. I don't think online's any good for us. Let's get rid of those. Let's scratch those. What are we down to now? Just 78, which is not too bad. Oh, as you can see, manage doesn't work like that. So what we'll do is change this to semantic. So manage should capture management. Let's do that. There you go. Good. So you don't have to put in every single variation. The semantic option widens the net for you. So we work down the list looking at our themes. So we've got payroll services, we've got outsourcing, we've got solutions. And again, we can sort by bid to have a look. International payroll. Well, let's say we don't do that. So again, we can negative that. We're not into international. And because there's more than one term, I would usually add it as a phrase. So that's now in the negative list. So, and again, you know what? Let's stick international in our filter. So payroll services, solutions, outsourcing, providers. These are all thematically linked and they could be served by one advert. That is if it's comfortable and appropriate to write an advert for outsource your payroll, for example. So we might decide that services, solutions, outsourcing are all thematically linked. Now we can add these to a new ad group, payroll services, for example. So we create that ad group, add them as an exact. I always start with exacts unless it's a large account with established data, then I'll exact and broad, and then we add those to that ad group. So once this ad group's up and running in the future, and if we see significant differences, so we just look at that ad group that we've added. If we see significant differences in here with these keywords, outsourcing service and solutions, then we may decide to split the ad group so we can tailor the ad copy and the landing page more appropriately. But I would say that these are, when we looked at the search results, these are thematically linked. So I think they're quite safe to sit together in that ad group for the time being. So yeah, I add keywords as exacts. They confirm or deny your thesis that it was a good idea to have that keyword in the ad group, in the account, because they'll show you through the metrics, they'll show you in conversion rates and so on. You might consider adding a phrase or a broad if you're using smart bidding, but my preference would be in 2021 for keyword match types, exact and a broad, especially if you're using smart bidding. If you're not using smart bidding and you struggle to hit 30 conversions a month, then I would be careful of broad keywords. You really need to be on top of your negative keywords if you're using broad on low data and low volume accounts. Another simple rule about these keywords: if you're unsure at any point and you Google it and you're still unsure, you just don't include it. So let's jump across to grouped ideas, because some of the work's already done for us. So the annoying thing is when we use the refine keyword tool, it doesn't apply to grouped ideas. That's why I didn't jump straight into grouped ideas. But your filters do impact the grouped ideas. Slightly annoying, but hey ho. Unfiltered grouped ideas are quite good for organic content ideas. But for paid search, we're not really interested in going after questions and informational stuff typically. But again, grouped stuff can be good for negatives. So let's clear some of these filters away so we can see the complete list. So let's get rid of the keywords, the payroll and average searches. So let's just clear this out. Okay, so the most relevant group apparently is personal tax account. Well, I'm not an accountant, but I don't think that that's relevant to us at all. We deal with small business and payroll and so on, whereas this is personal tax. And also look at the bids compared to what we've been seeing. They're really low, which is another tell that these are not high intent keywords, or they're not commercially viable. They might be high intent for the person who's doing their own tax, but commercially they're not high intent for us. So we could take this entire group and add it as a negative. And we could do it as a phrase match as well. So if we take negatives, phrase, done. So we've squished that, even though, to be fair, these are such low volume terms, it wouldn't really necessarily trigger, but it doesn't matter. That's nice and easy. So within the download later, we can pull off all these this master negative list. So let's have a look at some of these. Financial accounting. Right, here's a prime example of why grouped ideas cannot be added at face value. So you can't just go in and add this as an ad group. It's low competition, good volume, and it looks cheap. And you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? It's low competition, it's loads of volume, and it's cheap. Well, not so fast. Let's Google this and find out. Yeah, so we can clearly see this is not a high intent term. It's no good for us. This is very much informational. Investopedia, Wikipedia. That's a big tell. If you see Wikipedia high up, that's a big tell. There's one ad by a massive company. At the end of the day, they don't care where they're advertising clearly, because we've seen them crop up all the time. So don't let that skew your opinion of the search result. In fact, use the organic is a much better signal than seeing that one advert. So back in, guess what we're going to do? Not add the whole group. We're going to add that as a negative in quotation marks. We're adding it to our negative list. So hopefully you get the idea. I mean, it's literally rinse and repeat, going through the grouped list and through the keyword ideas list and keep adding them. Proper keyword research is not quick. It's not throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks. I mean, you can, if you want the slightly quicker starting point, start with a website and get some seed keywords that way. But then I would still pull them out, put them in, and then you can use the refine keywords option as well. So it just gives you that extra granularity. Okay, so quick recap. Seed keywords by category and known intent. Use Google Auto Suggest and related terms. Use your own website. Use competitor websites and landing pages. Top organic results as well. Feed them in, especially when they're high intent stuff, not informational. Use a few topical YouTube videos if you so wish. Group ideas, pretty potent, finding negatives as well as positives. And yeah, use that little hacky ad group for all your negatives. Keeps things easy. So let's have a look at forecasts before we go on to a few other key areas like bidding on competitors. So forecasts, to look at this, we go at plan overview, and here Google will give you all the magic. So it'll tell you exactly how your business is going to fare. We wish. So how accurate are the keyword planner numbers and bids? Well, the main use for the plan overview from my perspective is actually to see the locations and top locations. So for example, in the UK, we might be interested in cities. This is probably and counties as well, which are kind of like states in America, I guess. Well, not really. States are like countries to someone like me. But this is more informational, more useful than the projections tool. If you're going to use it though, what I recommend you do is you copy your plan and then you go into your ad groups and you delete your master negative, because it will use your master negative in your projections. But in short, why do I not trust the forecasting tool? Well, I use my own spreadsheet because the issue I find with this forecast is it just doesn't, or it rarely matches reality. So you can put live data in it where you know the click-through rate, you know the average CPC, you know the impressions, so on and so forth, and yet the projections don't agree with it. And I've done that time and time again, which makes me think, well, why use the forecaster? So the most accurate keyword data you ever get is from running ads, and there's no other way around it. This tool's okay if you already have an established account with historical data, but I really wouldn't rely on it for anything other than a finger in the air. For new accounts, especially with low volume keywords, the forecasts just don't match what you will see when you enter your bid and your budget and so on. This isn't reality, so don't assume that things are going to transpire like this. It either fills you with dread or false hope. So instead, base your decisions on your business fundamentals. What you do is you take your current organic or direct traffic conversion rate and you use that as your benchmark. Then you factor in your back-end conversion numbers, i.e. how well you convert. For e-commerce, that's essentially your return rate. So if your return rate is 5%, your back-end conversion rate is 95%. Then you need to consider your product service margins. You know, how much do you make, how much do you pay for your advertising, and also you use those numbers to set your ideal bids. You don't use the tools to tell you what to bid. You bid based on how much money your business is going to make out the back end. So if you want my projection sheet, just leave a comment and I'll stick a link in for you. I also have a video walkthrough for it. I'll share that link with you as well. So yeah, if you want the projection sheet, just ask. When you're finished, in your plan overview, or to be honest, from any screen, you can create campaigns, but don't use that. You can download all your ad groups and your keyword data, which is the option I would choose. You don't want to create one campaign with everything in it. It's highly unlikely. Well, if that is the case, then download everything first, grab your master keyword list, and then remove it. The better option though is to download everything, then you can either manually work through it or use Ads Editor. And just in case you're not aware, this master negatives would go under Tools, Shared Library, Negative Keyword List. And then in here we'd create the keyword list and we just paste the negatives in here. And if I show you a negative keyword list, you can apply it to any campaign you want. Simple. Okay, what about all these juicy competitor terms we saw, like Sage, Intuit, QuickBooks, yada yada yada. So bidding on competitors. Okay, as far as the law goes, if you don't mention trademark terms in your ad copy, then it's fair game. So a few things to consider when bidding on your competitors. So if you're a Me Too, i.e. you're the same, if you offer or do the same thing, it's quite common to bid on competitor terms, especially in the e-commerce space. But be very mindful of brand preference. You have to think like the searcher. Are they looking for a Hoover or a vacuum cleaner? Are they looking for the brand, or does it not matter? And then the other competitive bidding would be a scalper. So you're similar, you do something similar, perhaps from a different angle, and you want to lean on this other brand's demand. So that looks like brand plus product or brand plus service, i.e. their brand. Then there is the just going straight for the exact brand. So yeah, bidding on a competitor's exact brand term. The pros are, it's an easy win if you're an established brand and you're genuinely an alternative and people would be considering you. The negatives are high CPCs. It's going to cost a lot. But also, probably the biggest one, people clicking your ad by mistake, and then you get your competitors' support phone calls and requests, which does happen. In addition, if you're bidding directly on brand, you need to be aware of their ecosystem, which adds to your workload. So when they have a problem, you stop bidding, or when they run an offer, you're aware of what's going on. You can't really automate this sort of thing. You have to keep an eye on, your ear to the ground. So the other option is RLSA, win them back. So remarketing against your competitors' keywords. So your remarketing list, it's an entirely different topic, but this is a no-brainer really. You can dedicate a campaign to competitor terms where you target your audiences. So they're not observations. The only way your competitor terms will trigger your adverts are if they're against your audience, if that makes sense. Let me say that again. So the only way that your audience will see your adverts is if they search for the competitors and they're in your audience. All of this can backfire. If the brand is much bigger than you and has a bigger cash pile, they'll just turn their guns to you and start advertising on your brand, which is not always ideal. So it's pros and cons. I think the best one is the RLSA. So if people are looking for alternatives as well, then certainly try competitor bidding, but don't just do it as a matter of course. Which brings us neatly on to adding additional negative ideas. So competitor terms, their contact information. So brand plus contact, brand plus support plus phone, whatever it may be. If you've got a lot of local competitors, just have a look on the maps and you can take their company names and negative those. If you don't want to be found for your local competitors, that's an easy one. Location negatives, really obvious. If you don't want to be seen in London, negative London out, and boroughs and postcodes and whatever you can think of. Google predictive search. This is, to be fair, this is where infinite suggest is good, because it will show you all the predictive information and you can sort through looking for negative ideas. Otherwise, you have to do it yourself. Keyword space A, look at the suggestions, and then do it for B, C, and the rest of the alphabet, of course. And the other one is to put your competitor brands URLs through the keyword planner and see if there's any negative ideas by using their website in keyword ideas, start with a website, and put them through here and see if it gives you any suggestions. And that should really cover it for negatives. I mentioned DSA. Will dynamic search ads work for me? So I used dynamic search ads to hoover up all these long tail, low volume keywords. For example, if we put a filter in here and we do less than, let's say 50, it still leaves us 184 search terms in here. Now obviously a lot of these won't be relevant, but you're building out negatives. The fact is there will be more than this. So you use DSA to capture the lower volume long tail terms, but will it work for you? Again, another easy test to know if DSA is going to work for you is when you put your website through the keyword ideas, use pages. So put specific pages in and then review the suggested keywords that come through from Google. Don't use your entire website for this, use individual pages, and you just have to look at the keyword ideas and see if they are relevant or otherwise. If these keywords are not relevant, then that's a red flag that DSA might be a problem for your website. And then I've put together some, if we scroll down, some golden rules, just to recap. I'm sure there are more than 7, but these are a solid start. So less is more. You want the most relevant, highest intent keywords. You don't want to just be throwing every keyword at it. Number 2, focus as much time on negatives as you do positive keywords. This is really important in smaller accounts, to be honest. In fact, sometimes a small account can have more negatives than it has positive keywords. 3, avoid, put 50 here, but under 30 impressions. So you want equal or greater to 30 impressions per month per keyword, particularly if it's an exact match. Otherwise, you're just going to fill your account with loads of low impression keywords that chew up your time to manage. Keep ad groups to a maximum of 15 to 20 keywords. Now, this is including all match types. So if we had 5 exact keywords, for example, and then we included those same keywords as broads, that would be 10 keywords. And even then, 7 or 8 keywords with 2 match types, you're getting to the limit there. You don't want too many keywords because you've got to remember what the user sees. They look at the advert, they don't see the keyword. Is that one advert and the landing page relevant to all those keywords? That's when you start splitting out your ad groups, if you can't answer that question with a yes. Number 5, you want to have at least one ad group per unique landing page. So your landing page for a specific service or a product or a variation or whatever it may be. Now, depending on how complex your offering is, this might be too much to ask, but the golden rule is one ad group per unique landing page. And then number 6 is use exacts first for controlled testing and growth. Unless you have an established account with proven data, then you can use both an exact and a broad. And number 7, cast a wide net with dynamic search ads, which is great for scaling. It's a cheat. It's easy. If your website works with DSA, then it's a great way to scale. Okay, it's Q&A time. So I asked my Facebook group to ask questions around the keyword planner and keyword research. So let's take a look-see at some of the questions in Hither. So James has asked, let's cover competitors, please. Thank you, Jim. I've already covered that one in detail, I think. So yeah, so let's jump to Mike. Sorry, James. Let's have a look. So Mike said, find a lot of people ask about how accurate the numbers are, even keyword planner, volume bid, or in say SEMrush. They want to know how much to believe those numbers, should they set bids based on the data, etc. Thank you, Mike. I've already answered these, but a quick recap would be, I don't trust third-party tools because I don't trust their data, especially when Google struggles as well. So Google's data is not always precise, so how the third parties expect to be any better? Well, it's a rhetorical question, that one. So the main reason these numbers are so hard to project is that they're based on a moving target, the auction and the ad rank. So I use my projections. I'm not, by the way, Mike, I know I'm not answering you directly, Mike, because I know you're an expert. So I use my projection spreadsheet because it's simple. It's anchored around search impressions as well and the business metrics. Search impressions are arguably one of the more constant things, and the business metrics are the business metrics. So calculate your ideal bid and let her rip, as they say. So Belinda asks, how deep do you go into relevant keywords for a client? Do you assess potential traffic versus keyword volume and estimate the keywords needed to use budget, or go all in knowing if their budget grows, you have spare volume ready and waiting? Thank you, Belinda. Okay, so on the first point, I'm assuming you mean a prospect, because once they're paying you, going deep on keyword research should be your default approach, really. I've never given a prospect my keyword research because that's money and they haven't paid any. So instead, I would give them projections based on the research you've done, but not reveal the data. So you don't give them all the keyword research for free. So it's a bit carrot and stick, perhaps, but I think it's reasonable. I've used a variation of my projection spreadsheet for years now. It works. It sets the stage, and it works, which I've said already. So just thinking about your question, just trying to split it up in my head. So when it comes to budget, yeah, so a big mistake we've made over the years is allowing the budget to dictate the work. So this is really true of startups and small businesses, especially growing businesses. So it should never be about spending the budget for the sake of it, because that forces your hand to find more traffic for the sake of traffic. So I highly recommend in this situation you do a discovery campaign where a client might pay for your time, and you focus on a narrow area with a fixed fee and a budget. So you use this as a 30-day trial or pilot to see if it's worth expanding. The cool thing about doing a discovery is it saves a lot of pain, and it relieves pressure on you, because you and the client have committed to a test. So it has a beginning and an end, essentially. The end might be a full stop, or if the numbers are decent, it might be the expansion into a full campaign and ongoing management. I hope that answers the question, Belinda. So Matthias, sometimes I'm having a bad time when any relevant keywords have very low search volume. My first idea is to tell the client, dude, your stuff isn't getting searched. Would appreciate other ways to go. Yeah, thanks, Matthias. This is a common issue, particularly in niche and B2B markets, where often there isn't the sufficient search volume. So honestly, don't try and force it. Similar to my previous answer, you should have started with a discovery campaign. Now, I know that's easy to say, you probably already started. So one thing B2B usually has going for it is strong order and lifetime values. That means you can afford multiple touches and having a little patience with it. So if the demand isn't there in the search volumes, you can't just create it. You can't create the demand. Google is presenting you the demand that's there. It's finite. So instead, what I would suggest is that you remarket content to prospects that come from all channels. So your analytics audiences from all your different channels. Share case studies, white papers, videos, or whatever content you have that explains something and shows value. And you can do that with remarketing, of course. But even better, you could try and get them to opt into something of value that will help them. And then nurture them through the email, so take them off the search engine. And don't be afraid to put money into marketing the content, because it really does work. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so Luke says, when to use broad match? I've covered this, but my simple rule is start with exacts. Gives you more control over spend and the query match, obviously. For new and small accounts, if you're not using smart bidding and if you struggle to hit 30 conversions a month, just be careful with broad match. So your negatives need to be really good. It's not unusual, as I said earlier, to have more negatives than positive keywords in a small account. Well, it's not for me anyway. Yeah, so on the established account side, I'd include, and I do include broad keywords if you're using smart bidding or automated bidding and you're already getting results and you've got some headroom, so you've got budget to spend and you want to scale. Phrase match, obviously, if word order is important, but otherwise, I'm really not that bothered by phrase. That's why the latest Google keyword match update doesn't really bother me and my clients, our clients, because phrase has been it's been the performance lagger now for years. We've seen better results with broad, quite frankly. So in short, I've seen really good results from broads, but only if you do really good negative keyword work. In other words, don't blame broads burning through money if you can't be asked to keep on top of negatives. I don't mean you personally, Luke. It's just a general comment. Thank you. Okay, so Jeff said, general advice on when to pull the plug on a keyword if it seems to be very relevant but isn't giving you good numbers. What is typical or advisable in terms of volume for keywords in ad groups campaigns to keep sanity of management? Example, I have an account that has 1,500 keywords, but only the top 50 have more than 5 impressions a month. The top 50 have... Oh, okay, right. Seems like a good idea just to ignore the others. Looking for advice from experienced PPCers. Right, Jeff. This is the fat one, so let's break it down. First question, when to pull the plug on a keyword that you think is relevant? The simple fact is you need to do a better job of convincing people in the ad and the landing page. Unless it's an exact match, then you can review the search queries, obviously, for negatives to try and reduce the cost. But if other terms around it and inside the account are converting, then you're absolutely sure that this keyword is buying intent and is relevant, then it's more than likely the website. A few things to consider. Really important questions to objectively ask of the destination page. And you have to really be objective. First of all, add to landing page message match. It's got to be one-to-one if you want the best impact. Make sure you focus the landing page on a single purpose or a single message. So one message to one person to one, for one reason. A headline's super important, as you know, but can anyone understand the page in 6 seconds? When I mean anyone, I mean a layperson like me, if I've got no prior knowledge of your niche or your industry. Is it clear who the company is as well? Is there branding? Because I've seen that in the past. People strip back their landing pages to the point where there's no branding. Even removing things like phone numbers and stuff like that, which are trust signals. Is it pushing USPs, benefits, not just features? Just even if it's simple, like before and after or bullets. Yeah, so what they get before and after, like a before and after state of mind or situation, that works well. Don't use stock images, which I know is easier said than done, especially if a client hasn't got the budget, but if you do use stock images, try and get them from somewhere that doesn't look like their stock images. Clear call to action. What do you want someone to do? You don't want them to submit. Trust signals, testimonials, reviews, ratings, any accreditations. I mean, there's literally hundreds of things you can make sure the landing page does. But yeah, hopefully that's helped answer the question. I'm losing my voice now. In terms of the other part of your question, what is typical or advisable in terms of volume for keywords? I covered this earlier, but low volume keywords just add bloat. So in your example, you don't have 1,500 keywords, you have less than 50. So you need to pause anything with less than 30 impressions, add the remaining terms as exact negatives to a DSA campaign and let the DSA loose to capture those tiny impression terms. It really, really isn't worth your time trying to manage 1,000 plus keywords that generate so few clicks each month. They're literally the perfect case for DSA. So thank you, Jeff. Rob suggested how to assess keywords volume plus cost per click with smaller budgets. Yeah, I think I've covered this, Rob. I've come at bids and volumes from multiple angles now, so I think I've covered that off. And then Liam, how do you assess each keyword for top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel? Ooh, right. Okay. So similar to my reply to Matthias, I'd be looking at what content assets you can show for top of funnel and middle of funnel. So you need to address the user sees in the search, because it's not about the keyword. The only thing the user sees is the advert. I keep saying it. So can you make your advert relevant and enticing enough that they will click when they're looking for top of funnel terms? So when they're at the informational term stage, and then can you give them value once they click an advert instead of an organic result, which they would typically click? And does it make sense for the business to be paying for this anyway? So beyond that, it's macro micro conversions, but reverse engineer it. So for example, in analytics, you'd create segments for micro conversions, and then you would review how many macro conversions you see in the segment. So this validates your assumption that someone who, for example, visits the pricing page, watches 50% of the video, validates that they're a good prospect and that you want them in an audience. Why would we do this? Well, because if you see that 30% of your buyers perform these two specific actions, then that makes sense to have a segment or an audience or a micro conversion for those two things. I hope that makes sense. If you start measuring everything as segments or audiences first, then you have the option of understanding these tofu, top of funnel terms, and if they're helping or hindering. So you can check attribution. You can review the top of funnel terms with first versus last click in the attribution. And you can do that over quite a long window as well, like 45 to 90 days. Oh, thanks, Liam. Okay, so before my voice really evaporates, Kevin is asking, what's the rationale for having multiple keywords that could be triggered by the same query, e.g. because they're match stacked, synonyms, or contain some of the same terms? I'm asking because this is common practice, but I don't understand the rationale. So I assume you mean the same ad group. Well, I mean, it's an expansionist strategy. I personally use exact and broad in the same ad groups, same keyword, two match types. So my exact will take the prize, the click, unless the broad beats it in the auction. So you have control and some certainty with the exact match, and then the broad gives you additional volume and cheaper associated clicks, and it might not convert as well, but it's often will come out in the wash. The clicks are that much cheaper. You still keep on top of your negatives, of course, but I mean, I look at exact and broad like Batman and Robin, not Daphne and Celeste. So that's a different thing though to misrouting, which I'm not sure if you're asking. Misrouting is where multiple ad groups and campaigns can trigger for the same query. So that's a very amateur thing to do, unless you're testing some kind of hypothesis, of course. But it's also quite common to have misrouting in an account. You should have one advert with a variation or two that best serves that query. You should send people to one page, best serves that advert. When you start cannibalizing this continuity and competing internally in your account, you're losing control and you're losing performance. If that's the case, then one of those keywords will be beating the other. The keyword with the better stats should stay and the other keyword should go. It's as simple as that. You could argue if it's relevant, so these keywords that are in separate groups or campaigns are relevant, you move the weaker performing keyword to the winners ad group so you don't lose that volume. So yeah, misrouting terms, they really hurt performance. That's why I put the auto match type to negative list script in God tier ads, because that helps to a certain degree. So thanks, Kevin. Edgar asks, how do you go about grouping similar keywords such as auto accident attorney, auto accident lawyer, etc., Would you group these two keywords together or keep them separate? What determines your decision? Thanks, Edgar. I think I've answered this whilst working through the keyword planner, but to iterate, you must think about the advert the searcher sees. It sounds like I'm repeating myself, I know, sorry. But that is the only thing they see. So they're not concerned about your keyword or my keyword. You need to look at it from the perspective of, would your one advert make sense for both auto accident attorney and lawyer? If you're not confident of the answer, then obviously you need to search both terms and review the ads and the organic results. So Google will give you a breadcrumb to follow here. It's especially true if it serves a different organic result, because Google's trying to provide the most relevant result, and you should obviously do the same with your advert. So that said, you could come from the other angle here. If one of these terms is really low volume and doesn't deserve your time, or managing it separately, because there are thousands of other keywords, then you do have the option. You can use dynamic keyword insertion in the advert. But if you do this, you must be confident that the landing page is appropriate for both queries, for attorney and lawyer. So that's a trade-off between efficiency and performance. I hope that answers the question, Edgar. Rob says, how will keyword research be affected, and what adjustments will need to be made now that changes to match type are coming? Again, I think I've covered this one, Rob. As you probably saw, I didn't use phrase match. I mean, I'll test phrase match, but it always leaves a bad taste in my mouth, to be honest with you. Exact and broad, Batman and Robin. So just for anyone that doesn't know, broad match modified is becoming phrase. So if you didn't use phrase before, then this is a push from Google to get more people into broads, because essentially what it's doing is saying you can't use broad modified. It's going to turn into a phrase. A lot of people don't want to use a phrase or don't need it, and therefore maybe considering moving to broad from broad modified. So you probably do need to move broad modified to broad. If you don't have exacts, obviously move to exacts as your first option. Again, it comes down to volume and your appetite for spend, etc., etc. So if you're going straight to broad and you have enough data, you should be okay, but do it slowly. So keep on top of your negatives, switch portions of ad group at a time or campaign at a time. It depends how big your account is. But engrams are really important now as well. That's why, plug, we're releasing search query steroids on Ad Evolver next week, because it essentially shows you search query trends over the year, 6 months, past quarter, and then month. So it shows you how the engrams are performing in specific time segments. Never seen this been done before. It's really potent, very useful, and it's quite timely considering what's going on. So I got something right. Yep, thanks for the question, Rob. So John, which tool you find it best for discovering competitor ads keywords? Thank you. So I've covered this one multiple times now, John. I think you probably know my opinion on these third-party tools. So sorry, doesn't mean I'm not answering your question, but I think I've already answered it a few times. And Eddie said, pick me. No, Eddie. Okay, I think that just about covers it. So did I miss anything? It's been a long video. If I missed it, ask your question in the comments if you want to reply. And if you're mad enough to have sat through this whole thing and you're full of information, how about getting even more? So I've got a proven process and structures for Google Ads, and you need to check it out. It's called God Tier Ads, and you need to check it out because I'll put the price up again soon. So here's the advert. I've been Ed Leek. You've been very patient. Don't forget, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll revisit this video when Google removes manual bidding and keywords from your account. You think I'm kidding? Anyway, bye for now. Cheers.